What seriously? What do y'all like about Chipotle?
I beg your pardon.
Exactly.
I beg your pardon.
That's how I feel when y'all bring up fucking Chipotle. I beg your pardon. Yo, shout out to Iconic with the bit. Oh shit, the timing on that is great. Clip it. Tsushima. This is one of the most highly anticipated games of 2020. I'm not gonna lie, like I was looking forward to it, but like I wasn't like super excited about it. But I can say, if you don't want to sit here and listen to the entire review, I'm just gonna go out and go on a limb. Would I recommend this? Absolutely. It's worth $60. It's one of my favorite games of the year. Is this my favorite game of the year? I don't know. I gotta sit with it. I gotta let it marinate. I still feel like I'm leaning towards Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I really did enjoy this game, and like I feel like it's a dark horse. I wouldn't be upset if people put this on their Game of the Year nominee or their personal favorite game of the year. So for those of you unfamiliar about how I do my reviews, I wrote down some positives and some negatives. I'm just gonna go through them, and then at the end I'm gonna give a recommendation based off of that. But I mean, you already know. Let's see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 positives and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. All right. So the first positive is the graphics in the world. Oh man, Tsushima is a beautiful island. The entire game is beautiful. This game is majestic. It's like all this game did was reinforce like, man, I got to get to Japan before I fucking die, man. The game is it's saturated with saturated colors, leaves and the wind blowing everywhere. The cape, like the way your cape flows, the physics. I think what's really impressive about this game is this is easily one of the best looking games that I've seen, and it's whether console or PC, and this is at the end of the PS4 life cycle. Kind of reminds me of how like The Last of Us pushed the PS3 to its limits at the end of its life cycle. Like Sucker Punch really sucked every little bit of power left out of the PS4. And it was just a joy and a pleasure to just roam around. There's snowy mountains, there's fucking grassy areas, trees with all different types of colors, pretty water. There's so many. I think that's actually what made the world. It's not even just the colors. It was so many different climates and what's the word I'm looking for? Climates and like different types of like environments, I guess. So kudos to them for constructing a world that I wanted to explore. I caught myself being on the horse and just riding around, and like that's very rare for video games. My first negative is the camera. I'm pretty sure you've heard about this. In combat, the camera can be your worst enemy. Unfortunately, the game's camera has a hard time keeping up at certain, not all the time. When the camera works, it works, but there's a lot of times where like it has a hard time keeping up with what's going on in the game. You'll be surrounded by 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 enemies. And like, this is not like Assassin's Creed where the enemies will sit there and wait for you one by one to fight. No, multiple people will swing at you at once. Like in real life, they don't give a fuck. If you're getting jumped, you're getting jumped. And the camera doesn't know which way to look. And God forbid a building or a tree is next to you, because if it is, it's gonna spaz and then you can't see. So a lot of times you have to run into an open area to recenter the camera and help yourself out. So just know that the camera is going to be a frustration in this game for most people. I've seen some people say they didn't care about it, but 95% of people that I've seen play this game say that the camera can be an issue. It's not an absolute deal breaker. It's not that bad, but it is something to be aware of, that it is going to get on your nerves sometimes. It is going to get on your nerves. The second positive that I have for Ghost of Tsushima is the story is mwah. And when I'm talking about the story, and this kind of goes, this is the second and the third positive. These two can go together. The story and the main side missions. This game has the story, which are like the golden missions on the map. Then you have like the main side missions, where like the big white ones with like characters' faces on them. And then you have like side missions. The main storyline in this game is fire. Mongols invade Japan, and basically Mongols invade Tsushima, which is an island on the outskirts of Japan, and like it's your job as Jin to basically try to stop them from making it to the mainland, to the shogun and all the other samurais and shit. And Jin, the main character, he's raised by his uncle, who was the leader of the island, the head samurai of the island of Tsushima. And like your uncle's preaching, morals, the samurai code, and Jin is suffering with using tradition to combat the enemy, which is too predictable. Like literally in the beginning of the game, you start off by taking an L, and he instantly learns that samurai tradition might not be enough. So like this game takes place in before the age of the shinobi and the samurai. This is just when samurai ruled Japan. So like you don't even get referred to as a ninja if you play the ninja playthrough. You just get referred to as the ghost. So Jin struggles. He has like this morality thing going on where he's like, he sees the Mongols are doing anything to fucking win, and the samurais are too predictable. That's why they lost the first battle in the opening scene in the first place. So you get to choose between playing more of a ninja kind of rogue stealth style, or you can play a straight up pull up samurai style. And I thought that was a very interesting way of even telling the story, because most games nowadays allow you. It's rare that you come across a very straight stealth game like Splinter Cell. Most games are stealth action games, meaning like they encourage you to play stealthy, but you can also play action. This is definitely a stealth action game, and just using the samurai and the ninja differences in terms of code to actually be able to enable that type of play style. I thought that was really interesting, but the story is really good. I don't want to go into detail and spoil specifics because that's not what we're going to do here. You're just going to have to take my word and understand that I really enjoyed the story. One of the main reasons too that I actually enjoyed the story is, like I said, there are main side missions and then there's side missions. They're called Tales or something, Tales of Tsushima or something like that, where they're basically like loyalty missions in Mass Effect. So you have the main storyline, and then you have like these loyalty missions that you have to do with specific characters. These are reoccurring characters that you're going to see all throughout the island, and each one has like a 9-part episode for their loyalty missions. And they're side missions, but you want to do them because not only are the stories really good, they're just as good as the mainline story, but you get rewarded at the end with like special gear, special weapons, upgrades, and like armor and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed the main side missions as well as the story mode. So shout out to the story. It's fire. It's fire. The second negative that I have for this game is the parkour. Once again, I put the parkour kind of in the same realm as the camera. It's not flat out terrible, but I'll say this much, and I said the same thing on the GI podcast. The parkour in this game makes you appreciate Assassin's Creed and what they've created. Like the parkour in this game is not even better than like Assassin's Creed 1. It's not bad. It's like I give it like a C. It's very much usable, but like there are only very specific things that you can climb on, very specific buildings and rocks, versus like in Assassin's Creed, you can pretty much climb on anything and it's all very fluid. This game is very janky. This makes me appreciate the engine that Ubisoft created in terms of the parkour, because there's no game comparison. There's no game that can compare to, further proving my point, there's no game that can compare to Ubisoft in terms of parkouring. Luckily the glitches that we've run into, they're not game breaking. I was able to just back, but like you got to give Ubisoft their flowers. Like this parkour is not as good, but I give Sucker Punch kind of a pass because like this is their first time even trying to create a system like this. But I will say the parkour in this game, although it's not terrible, it will make you appreciate Assassin's Creed and what Ubisoft has created. My next positive is the combat. The combat in this game is fire. It's kind of, I would akin it to something. I would akin it to Batman, the Arkham series meets what's that shit called? Neo. So like the combat is similar to Batman in the sense that like you have a bunch of enemies around you and you have your sword, and you know you mash the sword button and you hit people. But then you also have the counter system, and if you time it correctly, you parry someone correctly. There's two different parries. There's a basic parry, which is like an okay one, and it'll basically knock them off balance, and then you might be able to get a hit in. And if you do a perfect parry, you'll basically completely knock them off balance, and it'll slow down time, and it's guaranteed hits, and you'll get resolve and stuff like that. So the basic combat plays like Batman, but the difference is their stances. Like Neo, you have 4 different stances in the game, and you have to switch up your stances based off the enemy type, and if you don't, the combat will be a whole lot harder. So that shit was fire. I thought the combat was fire. It's just the camera can sometimes get on your nerves. Combine that with all the different ninja tools that you get, like bombs, kunais. You can play stealthy if you want to, because you also have a knife. And you can also light your sword on fire at one point. That's fire, literally. You get a bow and arrow. You get multiple bow and arrows. You get a bow and arrow and a long bow, which does heavy damage. So like the combat is fire. The combat is fire. Next negative that I have is the game can be glitchy. Once again, you know, the crazy part is like all the negatives that I have, they're negatives, but they're not so fucking bad that it ruins the experience. They're just kind of like they could have been better. They're not flat out terrible, if that makes sense. So this game can be glitchy. Understand that, like, although this game is glitchy, it's like your typical open world stuff, just maybe a little bit more than average. None of it was game breaking. I never encountered a glitch that made it crash my PS4. The worst glitch I got was the mission wasn't loading, so I had to restart. I just had to load from the last checkpoint. That only happened once. It took me like 60 hours to beat this game because I didn't beat the game at 100%, but I beat it at like probably like 98%. I did the majority of the shit. I was gonna go for 100, but then by the time I got to the end of the game, I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna run through the story. So I beat the majority of the game, and then like in my 60 hours of playing this game, I only encountered that glitch where I had to restart the loading point because the mission wouldn't load. Other than that, most of the glitches you'll encounter involve like the environment. It kind of goes into the parkour. Sometimes like I would fall through the geometry, not actually fall through the map, but like I would get stuck in a rock or something, and then he would float in the air and do the T-pose, and then the game would either push you out or it would reload the area. So nothing really game breaking, just kind of annoying. Be aware that stuff is gonna happen. Next positive, this is a really weird one because I feel like I don't ever really bring this up, but I feel like it's a unique positive. The load times in this game are magnificent. I don't know how the fuck they did this, but this game loads fast, and this is an open world game, by the way. Fucking the fast travel is fast. I read somewhere, somebody said in my Twitch chat that that originally the game loaded even faster, but it was loading too fast to the point where like you couldn't even read the loading screens. So they actually ended up slowing down the loading times. It's funny in itself because I've seen people also say that like the load times are still too fast because they don't even have time to read the tips and tricks on the loading screens or whatever. But the load times are really fast. If you're trying to get from point A to B in this game, that is no problem. And I don't know what tech they implemented, what type of optimization Sucker Punch did with this game, but more studios need to talk to Sucker Punch because they know how to optimize their games to where you're not waiting fucking 3 minutes for the fucking game to load. Especially loading times are really bad when you're on a hard part of the game and you die and then you have to sit there and wait for 2 minutes. You're already fucking irritated. Then you gotta sit. Kudos. It's optimized. Kudos. The next negative I have for this game is the AI is dumb as hell. Not always. Actually, the AI is dumb and inconsistent, actually. So basically when you're doing like the stealth portion of the game, all you have to do is like, if let's say you get caught by a guard, all you got to do is sprint away and hide in the grass, and a lot of times they won't find you. And I'm talking about like, it's really stupid. Like you can literally be in the line of the sight of the grass or the bush. You run away and they can see you running into the bush, but then they don't know where you are. Or you can go hide in the tent and like he's looking at the tent and he watches you run in the tent and they don't know where you go. So you can cheese the game really bad in terms of the stealth because the AI could be really bad. But the thing is, like, it's only 50-50. It's not like that all the time. There are other times where the AI will see you coming from like a mile away, and it kind of breaks the immersion. It creates for an inconsistent experience because you don't know what you're going to get whenever you run into a camp. You don't know if it's going to be that glitchy AI, or you don't know if it's going to be the really crazy shit. It's starting to get dark outside. Let me turn my lights on. Hold up. Room lights. Let me turn that shit on a little bit. All right. Anyways, so yeah, there's that. Let's see. What was that glitchy? No, AI. That was, so yeah, the AI. Just be aware that the AI is very inconsistent. Next positive, the skill tree is very large in this game. You will be exploring all throughout the island. They have tons of different abilities to unlock. You know, I love customization. So just know that this game has a large skill tree and you're probably going to want to unlock everything, which kind of goes into the combat. I don't really have too much to say about that. I just like large skill trees. And then last but not least, on the negatives, it felt like stealth was an afterthought. That's my last negative. For those of you who are thinking this is going to be Assassin's Creed Japan, some people will say it is. In my opinion, it's not. As someone who's played a lot of Assassin's Creed, it's almost there. It's almost there. They just got a few things to clean up, mainly that parkour. That parkour has got to be way better. It is. I'm sorry. Parkour in this game does not hold a candle to Assassin's Creed. And the stealth in this game, it doesn't hold a candle to Assassin's Creed either. It's just very basic. Feels like an afterthought. And then on top of that, the AI is really bad. So I feel like if they make a Ghost of Tsushima 2, which I'm pretty sure they're gonna, based off the ending, no spoilers, but based off the ending, I feel like they're gonna make a sequel. I feel like they should put a little bit more emphasis on the stealth tree, because there was way too much emphasis on the samurai tree. I feel like just give us more abilities, more options in terms of stealth. I think that would be dope. And my last positive is the ending. I rarely compliment, and this goes into the story, but fuck it, you know, I gotta give a positive the ending. I actually really enjoyed the ending. Ethos was kind of like whatever about the ending, and he was like, yo, I want to see your reaction. What do you think of it? And you can get, there's two endings in the game. The ending that I got, I was actually very satisfied with. The music was fire at the end. That shit was fucking great. So I rarely do I compliment an ending, but I actually really enjoyed the ending to it. And I'm looking forward to if they do a sequel, which I'm about 99% sure there will be a sequel in a few years. We're not going to get it right away, but there's no way they're not going to try to turn this to a franchise, in my opinion. So based off of all those positives and those negatives, my final recommendation is this game is absolutely worth buying. It's one of my favorite games of the year. It's worth $60. Pick up Ghost of Tsushima for the PS4. Is this worth buying a PS4 for? No, because to be honest, the PS5 is coming out. Save your money if you don't own a PS4. Just borrow your friend's PS4. I don't know if you don't own one, but if you do own a PS4, definitely pick this up.